Hey, what's up folks? This is Keith. You're watching Barbour's Auto Help. Today I've got a 2000 Ford Excursion with a 6.8 liter V10 in it. And it's got a little problem here. I got a little chocolate milk inside the cooling system. I suspect I've got a blown oil cooler. You know, this could be caused by a number of things really, like a blown head gasket or a cracked head or a cracked block, and the list goes on. But realistically, the vehicle's running really well. I don't have any misfires. I checked the mode 6 data and I don't have any history of misfires, and it's running well. The oil cooler is like 40 to 100 bucks. So we're gonna go ahead and replace the oil cooler on this thing first, flush this out, and then recheck, and we'll see what we got after that. But most likely, that's what the problem is.
Now, as far as what you can expect in this video, I'm basically just going to be replacing the oil cooler. You won't actually see me flushing the cooling system out.
And of course, I did check the engine oil, and there was no oil on the dipstick. So the oil's going somewhere, and it's going into the cooling system. And this isn't something from the transmission fluid or the transmission. I did check the transmission fluid while it was running, and the fluid level was full, so I don't suspect we got any transmission fluid getting in there. Plus, that's not really the color of transmission fluid, so we got a situation with engine oil getting into the cooling system. We're going to go ahead and get started on this thing. I've already got the battery disconnected. Of course, the vehicle's not running. It's in park, got the parking brake on, and the wheels are chocked, and the vehicle is parked on a nice level surface, nice hard level surface. And we're going to go ahead and start by draining the cooling system. This thing is totally cool, by the way. I can actually touch this and it's not even warm at all. I let it sit and cool down for a good long time before actually opening up that coolant reservoir. Got to make sure that your vehicle's cool before you mess around with the cooling system there. So we're going to go up underneath this thing and drain the pepcock. All right, so the pepcock is just underneath the front of the vehicle, behind the front bumper. On the driver's side here, I forgot to get my daggum gloves on. You want to wear gloves before you do this. Some good old nitro gloves will work just fine. You see, you got this little nut right here. It's actually a 19 millimeter or 3/4. A socket will go on that just fine, or a wrench, and you twist it counterclockwise, and the coolant drains from right there. Be sure you got you a bucket, and you got your ground protected. And as mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that your cooling system is totally cool before you do this. You don't want to get hot coolant on you. It can hurt rather badly. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and turn this until it starts draining. Ooh. Now I suspect that a lot of the coolant that comes out at first is going to be pretty clean. Oil, of course, will float on the surface of coolant or water, so that will probably come out last. And we're just going to let this thing sit here and drain for a little bit until it stops dripping, and then we'll proceed. And protect your pets, folks. That doesn't look very appetizing to you and me, but to an animal, that is actually a pretty sweet treat right there, but it's poisonous. That will kill your pet. I have a helper, Mr. Annex, that helps me with a lot of my videos, and he is far away right now, and I'm keeping a good eye on this, and I'm going to store this away where he can't get to it. So while that thing's draining and dripping and whatnot, this is the new oil cooler, and this bolts to the oil filter adapter. And then, of course, the oil filter bolts up to the bottom of it right there. You see these two nipples right here? These are the coolant nipples, or the inlet and outlet, or vice versa, for the coolant to go through the oil cooler. Coolant goes into the oil cooler and cools down the oil that actually goes down into this area of the oil cooler right here. Kind of circulates around it, picking up all that heat energy, and then pulling it out and then going through the radiator and cooling it off. So that's the function of the oil cooler there. And I believe what's going on the old oil cooler is the chamber that houses the engine oil that goes through the oil cooler is corroded, and it's actually leaking into the cooling system, or the coolant passage inside this thing, and that's what's introducing oil into the cooling system there. Pretty simple design, but and they're pretty reliable. They don't usually do this, but it happens from time to time. And like I said, this is the most likely cause of the oil getting into the coolant system, in my opinion. Alrighty folks, here we are. We're up underneath the vehicle. That blue thing right there is the oil filter. Just above it is the oil cooler. This is on the back side of the engine, on the driver's side of the engine. This is the transmission right here. That's your starter right there. And back up yonder way is your radiator. So that's where it's at. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to disconnect these coolant hoses going to the oil cooler. We have 2 hose clamps right here, spring type. We need to squeeze these together and scooch them back, and then disconnect the hoses from the oil cooler. Now, you'll need to have a catch pan up underneath this. Even though we drained out the cooling system, there's still some coolant in there, and it's going to dump out probably a good amount, so be ready for that. Let's see if we can get some pliers up in there. Squeeze those hose clamps together. So getting some pliers up there was a little bit of a challenge. So we're going to have to give ourselves a little bit more room by removing the oil filter first, and that should open it up a bit. Okay. I'm gonna have to wait for that to quit dripping and give it some time. All right, now that the oil filter is out of the way, I think we got a better shot to that hose clamp there. And there we go. I've managed to get my pliers on there. We're gonna work this hose clamp back just a ways, get it off that nipple. Now, we need to remove this hose, and you'll notice that the hose is kind of stuck on there. What I like to do is take a pair of pliers, like these channel locks here, place them over the hose like this, and give it a gentle squeeze. We're not going to rip the hose up or anything. We're just going to kind of grab it, kind of work it back and forth. We're trying to break the seal on the nipple there. Just be very gentle with it. I'm going to try to pull that hose off. Get ready though, because there is going to be coolant in there. So that's about as far as I can get that hose back without actually removing the cooler. I think we'll need to remove this cooler so that we can actually get it back far enough to get enough room to get those hoses off right there. Now, if you look up in there, you'll notice that it receives a Allen socket. This is a big boy Allen socket. This is a 14 millimeter. Not a part of your normal set, so you'll need to buy this if you don't have this already. Let's see here. All right, once that bolt's out, this thing just comes right off. Now we got a little bit more room to pull this out like that. We can push that hose off the rest of the way and get ready for some coolant. There should be a little coolant in there. There we go. And we're just gonna let that sit and drain for a minute. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna work our other hose off. It's just like this hose right here, little spring clamp, and we're gonna scooch it back and get it right off there. All right, well, here it is, guys. Pretty gnarly looking. Has been on there for a long time. Now, some of you may be wondering, how come only oil is getting into the coolant and no oil or no coolant is getting into the oil system? Your oil system actually operates at a higher pressure. So sometimes if you have some compromised surfaces inside there, it will allow oil to leak into the cooling system and not vice versa. Your cooling system may get up to about 10 to 15 psi at the most, and your oil pressure is well above that. So it's kind of like a one-way type leak sometimes. Sometimes it does go both ways. This is just a special instance here. All right, now we need to clean up our mating surface there. We're just going to take a rag and kind of wipe it clean first. It's best to use a lint-free rag. This is not a lint-free rag, but that is the best practice. You don't want to get any kind of lint or debris inside your oil system there, so that's why you want to do that. Then, after you got it kind of cleaned up a little bit there, take you something like a Scotch-Brite pad, scouring pad. This is a red one. I recommend the ones from the grocery store that are green. They work pretty well. Just gonna take and clean all that grime and stuff off there and just get a nice metal surface going for your new adapter to go on, or your new oil cooler to go on there. And we're just gonna work it all the way around and get it nice and cleaned up. All right, we got it cleaned up. We're gonna take our rag and Wipe it down one more time. Now, a lot of what you're seeing right there is staining. This surface is nice and clean. It's nice and smooth all the way around. It's near impossible to get all the staining up, but you do want a perfectly smooth surface all the way around for your new oil cooler to mate up with, so that the seal seals up properly. Let me give you a close-up here. You can see that that is pretty well cleaned up. So we're ready to put our new oil cooler on. Now your new oil cooler, where it mates up to the oil filter adapter, should have a gasket on it on the top portion right here. Make sure that it's in there properly and securely all the way around, and it should come with a new bolt. Before we put this oil cooler back up there, we're going to put a little bit of oil on this gasket here. I don't think you have to do this, but I like to do this, so I'm going to put a little oil on mine. Now, as you're putting this oil cooler on, you're going to have to put this hose on, or these hoses on, as you put it up into place, and make sure that your hose clamps are in position before you actually start bolting it up. It's near impossible to get these things back on once it's in place there. So put these on as you're installing it. See, I've got one hose clamp ready to go there. I've got my pliers on it. It's cinched down and loose, ready to go. And this one's in position to where I can get to the tangs readily. Now you can actually lock this into position and then unlock it with a screwdriver after the fact. I'm just going to use the old plier method this go around. So, but you can do that if you desire to do that. And you know, check your hoses before you put this thing up. Make sure they're not ripped or you didn't damage them or anything like that in the process. So we'll go ahead and get this thing up there. Start by putting this hose on first. Now you want to make sure that this hose is oriented on that nipple the same way it was on the old oil cooler. You don't want to twist the hose or anything like that. You want it in the same position, basically. See if I can get my hose clamp slid down here. Now when you're sliding your hose clamp up, you'll notice you got this little rib on the coolant nipple right here on the oil cooler. You want to make sure that the hose clamp is pushed down past that rib. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but you want to make sure that the hose clamp is in exactly the same place on the hose as it was before. There we go. And you can kind of feel that rib and make sure that you got that hose clamp past it right there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take our new bolt and push it through there, and then we're going to put our cooler in place. Now this, oh, for crying out loud, done dropped it. All right, go ahead and put our new bolt in place there. Push it through, and let's go ahead and get our oil cooler in place. Go ahead and push the oil cooler all the way down, and you want to make sure it's clocked exactly like the other one was clocked. You can't have this thing at an angle or anything. It's got to go back on exactly like the old one did. And there's actually cleats on the other side that kind of help to guide you into the correct position on that adapter base there.
So just for some added clarity here, this is the top side of the oil cooler. You can see that you got those cleats going all the way around just to the outside of that black gasket right there. You'll notice right here, that little opening right there is going to receive the cleat on the oil filter adapter right here. So if you straddle that cleat with the gapped area on the oil cooler, you should be good to go.
All right, now we got that in place. Now we need to torque it down. I'm going to be torquing it down to 43 foot-pounds. Always verify in your repair manual what the torque spec is for yours. We're going to be using our 14 millimeter Allen for this. There we go. Let's kind of clean this up a little bit. There we are. Now it's ready to receive the oil filter. We'll get you a new oil filter to put on, of course. Let's take our new oil filter, and you want to take a little bit of oil and smear it all along this gasket here. And put your new oil filter into place. Now once the oil filter makes contact with the base there, once the gasket makes contact, you're supposed to spin it another 3/4 of a turn. Of course, follow the instructions that come with the oil filter that you choose to put on. So this is how everything looks. You see the angle of my hoses going through between the engine and the frame there, or the cross member, whatever you want to call it. And that's how the oil filter looks on there. That's how the base looks. You'll probably want to spray this off really well, maybe with some brake clean. Get all that cleaned up really well, because this is going to get really hot and it's going to burn off. Clean it up before you actually start it. Get it nice and dry, and clean up whatever else you might have got messy in the process. You know, just make it nice and tidy up underneath here.
Well, that's pretty much as far as we're going to go in this video, guys. Go ahead and tighten up the petcock on your radiator. I don't know the spec on it, but you can over tighten it, and they do break if you do over tighten it. So just snug should do it. Check for leaks afterwards. At this point, you'll need to top off the engine oil and fill the cooling system. Information on how to do that properly not shown in this video. However, I will post a link to another video down in the description of this video showing how to vacuum fill a cooling system. Feel free to watch that when you get some time. Once you got the coolant and oil topped off, go ahead and reconnect the negative battery clamp to your battery and start the vehicle up. Make sure that your oil pressure light goes out and that your oil pressure gauge goes up. Then take a peek underneath the vehicle and make sure there's no oil spewing out anywhere. Do a visual from the side of the vehicle. Do not crawl up underneath the vehicle while it's running. If you run into a problem, shut the vehicle off immediately and then address the situation. If you didn't notice anything, go ahead and shut the vehicle off, and then with the vehicle in park and shut off, with the tires chalked and parking brake applied, crawl up underneath the vehicle and then inspect the oil filter base and the oil cooler. Make sure it's not leaking any oil anywhere. Make repairs as necessary. I would also suggest doing a cooling system pressure test. I don't have that information included in this video. You want to make sure that those hoses that you disconnected on the oil cooler aren't leaking. Repair as necessary. Now, if your oil cooler has failed in a similar fashion to the one shown in this video here, just filling up the cooling system is not going to do. You're going to have to do an extensive flush on the cooling system to get all of that stuff out. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Please read the entire description down below this video before you apply any of this knowledge or attempt this. I may need to clarify some things before I do that. Also, please read the disclaimer at the very end of it, and please like and subscribe.